It should be a busy news day for Michigan. Eventually.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. How does Ole Miss beat Georgia today? We'll talk about that with Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. He knows a thing or two, and Oklahoma State could make some big-time news. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Maybe you used Game Time to go to the Cotton Bowl and watch Miami beat Ohio State. I had a reaction show up last night, and I tell you what, I still can't believe that happened, but it did. But it did. Full credit to Miami there. They were the better football team. Michigan is going to be a better football team in 2026 than they were this year, presuming they make a couple of hits in the portal. So, one particular name to know that I don't know at this point how he wouldn't end up at Michigan is John Daley Henry. He had a really good season. 11.5 sacks and 17.5 TFLs for the Utes this past year, 6'4", 255 pounds. He announced his intention to enter the transfer portal. There has been speculation that he could wind up with the Wolverines. If a defensive player is leaving Utah and the former defensive coordinator who he just thrived under is now the head coach and he is leaving that school, I don't know where else he could go. Maybe some other school is going to come in with a mega offer and manage to get him away from Michigan. But this feels like a perfect move for the Wolverines. Number one, Kyle Whittingham knows what this guy can do. This guy knows what he's going to do under Kyle Whittingham's defense. And by the way, as I'm recording this segment, Jay Hill, Jason Beck, they haven't been announced as the coordinator hires just yet. I expect both to be hired at least by the time the transfer portal opens on Friday. I would think you want to have your coordinators in place and established by the time that, you start building out your roster for your first season in Ann Arbor. Difficult schedule or not, expectations should reasonably be pretty darn high for this Michigan program. So, Jason Beck was coaching on Wednesday night in the Las Vegas Bowl, and there was plenty of discussion on the broadcast because this is the way this dumb college football calendar is set up about whether he would be there next year or not. So, at least Utah kept him for that amount of time. But if Kyle Whittingham, who I presume has spoken a time or two to Bryce Underwood, if he keeps him there, then Devin Dampier probably stays behind at Utah. And I think Jason Beck will go to Michigan. I think Jay Hill will leave BYU and go be the defensive coordinator at Michigan. I think they will be able to land John Daley Henry out of the portal, and their work will still only just have begun. That's a lot of chess pieces, though, to move around if you're Kyle Whittingham. He was at the Citrus Bowl against Texas, a game in which Michigan lost on account of the fact that the defense did not play the way that a Michigan defense typically does. And I'm sure Kyle Whittingham saw that and thought, hey, look at that offense, though. Offense put up 27 points. That's usually enough for Kyle Whittingham coach football teams. Got to have the personnel, and Michigan's got plenty of pieces in place. I think they'll add a couple of more. Maybe they even go out and add a couple other pieces along the defensive line because they're losing a big piece up front in Derek Moore, who is out of eligibility. So perhaps a couple pieces could do you some good. Kyle Whittingham loves trench play. Look at what trench play and a focus up front did for Mario Cristobal. 2 wins away from a national championship for the Miami Hurricanes. Hey, a lot of people, myself included, doubted that could come to fruition, and yet here we are, 2 wins away. How? Building inside out. I think Kyle Whittingham will absolutely do that. I think going into the transfer portal and saying, hey, we're going to evaluate every single offensive lineman. We're going to evaluate every single defensive lineman. And we are going to continue building Michigan football the way that it has succeeded over the last several years. And beyond, of course. But the reason that I think this hire is such a perfect fit is Utah and Michigan look so similar to one another. I mean, even their quarterbacks have similar styles of play, except Bryce Underwood, I think, could do more passing the ball once he gets some refinement than Devin Dampier can. Though Devin Dampier just went crazy in the Las Vegas Bowl against Nebraska, admittedly, whose new defense coordinator from San Diego State isn't in place yet, and that was certainly evident. But I think Jason Beck with Bryce Underwood would be an awesome fit. I mean, Wolverine fans, if you're not already rooting for Jason Beck to be hired, just go look at what Devin Dampier did at New Mexico 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, I should say, 2 seasons ago. You get why I got confused there. And this past year, they talked about a lot on the broadcast. He has just rewritten the record books everywhere that he's been. That's just what he does. I'm sure he'll be a head coach one day. But he is a phenomenal offensive coordinator. And Bryce Underwood is just like the 2.0 version of Devin Dampier. He's bigger, he's got a bigger arm, and has got more arm talent. He just needs a little work, needs a little refinement. And we saw that in the bowl game against Texas. And just a quick side note on that front, by the way. There were a lot of folks out there. I fully admit the college football schedule is messed up. As I record this show, and I think this will change eventually, a team that has a bye in the first round hasn't won a game yet. That's a sign that something is wrong. But everybody wants to get rid of bowl games. I saw a bunch of packed stadiums in the 4 games leading up to the playoff game on Wednesday night. I saw plenty of guys that did want to be there, plenty of coaches that did want their teams to play hard and cared about winning, and I was having a good time watching it. What's the urge from some folks? Get rid of bowl games. Why? If you don't want to watch them, then don't watch them. But plenty of people still do. And college football is fun. And yeah, some guys are going to opt out. You know what that does? Creates an opportunity for other guys. I'm watching Nebraska play, and they're getting a real data point on a true freshman quarterback to see if he's the quarterback of the future to replace Dylan Raiola. Anyway, end of rant. Getting this back to Michigan for just a moment. Once the coordinators get in place, yeah, I'm sure there will be a focus about what they have in-house and what they will need in the transfer portal up front for Michigan. But I do not think they're going to suddenly turn into an offense run by Lincoln Riley or the late Mike Leach, RIP, forever and always Pirate. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But Andrew Marsh can't be the only reliable pass catcher for the Michigan Wolverines. And I talked, I think it was last week on the show, the depth of talent for pass catcher. There is a tight end from New Mexico who was an all-conference selection. That'd be a great addition in the Michigan offense. Utah's offense this year used their tight ends a bunch. There are so many wide receivers. There are so many options. You have got, not because he's a risk to transfer, but just because even though you are going to continue to be under Kyle Whittingham, a primarily run-first football team, I think Michigan would have been a 10-win team this year if they'd had better pass catchers. I don't think that's a hot take. But their pass game didn't have the ability to help out the quarterback because they were relying on a true freshman and nobody else was really that consistent. And the abundance of talent for wide receivers in the portal is all over the place. Well, Kyle Whittingham is there to go compete for a Big Ten championship and a national championship. If you're Michigan, you're serious about that, go get your young quarterback some help. You don't need to go get Cam Coleman. You don't need to try to convince Ryan Williams to go in the portal from Alabama. I don't know that that would actually happen, just to be clear. But you don't need to go get somebody like that. Heck, maybe you want to go get Nick Marsh, a transfer from Michigan State. It'd be a great fit. You could have the Marshes on the outside. I think that'd work really well. You don't even have to go to that level. You don't have to get a top 2, 3, 4 wide receiver transfer prospect. Can you just go get like a top 10, a top 20, and then a depth piece that nobody's heard of? That's it. That's all I'm asking for. So I think Michigan's going to have a lot of news coming their way. I think it's going to be a lot of really good stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. How does Ole Miss beat Georgia? Here's how. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. And if you want to bet these college football playoff games, then guess what? FanDuel's the place to go. Point spreads, point total, money line, prop bets. FanDuel has got you covered for all of these games and beyond. NBA, NFL, college football, FanDuel is the place to go. And for the NBA, before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. It's hard to beat a team twice. Will Georgia do just that against Ole Miss? Boy, we shall find out. Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss is here to discuss that fact. Steven, how do you think Georgia has won the game, if they have in fact won the game? What does it look like to you? What has happened?
Basically, in my opinion, this is the simplest game that Ole Miss will play all season, because by simple, I don't mean easy. I just mean simple. And if Georgia can run the ball effectively, they are going to win the game. If Ole Miss can hold Georgia to about 150 yards rushing, Ole Miss is likely going to win the game. It really is that simple. Now, it's easier said than done, but there are signs that what happened in October will not happen on January 1st. The defense has gotten remarkably better. I tell people all the time, Ole Miss was in love with the drop 8 defense in the early part of the season. They had 5 sacks through like 6 games in the early part of the season. The Georgia game exposed that. Pete Golding went to the stuff that made last year's defense so good, and next thing you know, they have 20 sacks in the next 5 games. The defense is holding their own against the run game. And that look, if you can get a stop, if you can force a field goal from time to time on this Georgia offense, if you can get them in long yardage, the defense has a chance to get really successful against Georgia, and the game could look a lot like last year's game as opposed to the October game.
I'm glad you brought up the Georgia running game, because it's been the number one thing I've talked about with the Bulldogs all season long. And I have to credit their offensive staff, their offensive line coach, everybody, because they have made significant strides from a year ago. I think 2026 could be a breakout year for Nate Frazier. He's already having a really good season, but I think that what the Georgia backfield has been able to do to help Gunner Stockton has been really, really big for the Georgia offense. But here's my thing, Steve. I get where you're coming from on it. Simple, take away the run. I don't think it's that simple, because Georgia has made more of an effort from what I've seen this year to be balanced. But if you tell me right now, Georgia's only going to run for around 100 yards, it's going to be under 4 yards a carry, it's going to be a slugfest. I've been a Gunner Stockton fan for a while. I trust him to drop back and try to throw for 300 to 350 yards against this Ole Miss defense, if that is what is required. I don't think that's game plan number one. It's not plan A for Georgia and Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator. If it comes to that, though, I think the weapons that he's got, the way that he's playing, I'm a huge Gunner Stockton fan. I think he's a great big game quarterback. The Tennessee game is one that pops into my head in particular, as a matchup that I saw where Georgia ran the ball decently well, but he had to carry the load. He had to go up and down the field. They were trailing. He brought them back. I have a lot of confidence in Gunner Stockton if Georgia doesn't run the ball very well in this game. What is your confidence in Ole Miss's pass defense?
Better than it was. In the early part of the season, the reason they were doing the drop 8 was kind of to protect them a little bit, because there were new players hopping in, Sage Ryan, Wyatt Williams, all of those guys on the back end of the defense. There's not a true free safety that Ole Miss has had the previous 5 years. So people got a little bit nervous about what was going on, because you all know the transfer portal can be a pull of a slot machine in this day and age. They kind of like, hey, we're going to take some explosive plays from here or there in the pass game to shut down the run game, because you don't want to lose to Georgia by death by 1,000 cuts. Whether it's 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2. That's how they have a 9-minute drive and completely chew you up. In the fourth quarter, that happened in Sanford Stadium against Ole Miss happens. They're okay with giving up an explosive 70-yard pass to Zach Branch if that's what happens. They don't want to give up a 17-play drive to Georgia that eats up half the clock and ends up taking away a possession or two from your offense, which is the strength of the team.
See, that's fascinating to hear, because typically you hear it in the exact opposite way. Hey, we don't want to give them an easy drive. We'll make them earn their way down the field. Death by 1,000 cut. Bend, but don't break. But I actually see the point you're making, because this Ole Miss offense is built to get up and down the field and win a shootout. And that's what it was in the first matchup, of course. Now, on the other side, I think one of the biggest differences besides the coaching staff, of course, between the first matchup in Athens and what we're getting in the Sugar Bowl, right? Sugar Bowl, I got that right in my head. Mm-hmm. I think Georgia's defense has started to look like the Georgia defense again. That SEC championship game against Alabama, when you look at what they put on the field against a great Oklahoma defense on the road in the first round of the playoff, I was, of course, impressed with what Alabama did there. But then it made me think, wait a minute, Georgia just made them look inept. It's why I picked Oklahoma to win the game. I thought it'd be rinse and repeat. The Alabama offense had been phenomenal in the last several weeks. But that Georgia defense, they look like they are playing faster, more physically. You can't run on them super well. I think that Georgia defense is the biggest difference from the last meeting. Do you think I'm crazy?
No, it is better. It genuinely is better than what you saw in the beginning of the season. But part of that has to do, in my opinion, with offenses that you match up well against. Like they played Texas, and they completely chewed up Texas in Athens, Georgia. And Arch Manning was put in a blender for basically that whole game. Texas is consistently a bad matchup for that defense. They do a lot of the pin and pull running game, the slow developing stuff that the speed of the Georgia defense just eats up. Gary Patterson says there's no way that would work, that you can't do stuff like that. They played against Alabama, good team. Quarterback, a little bit injured, no Jam Miller. Those did not help with the pass game, which all of a sudden Georgia knew you're going to throw the ball because you have to. And the other one against Georgia Tech and against Charlotte, that's fine. I'm not saying it's fool's gold. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't hear that. I'm saying I think we need to see how they perform against an offense like Ole Miss that went up and down the field on them. I don't know if we have 100% an idea, because the best player on the football field the first time these two teams met was Daquan Wright, the tight end. He doesn't get any pub. Georgia's linebackers could not cover him. And in the fourth quarter, when Trinidad Chambliss was struggling and Georgia had that epic comeback to win the game, there were still wide open passes to Daquan Wright that he just spiked. He just missed. That would have been 40, 45-yard gains. So I am curious to see what the defense looks like for the Georgia Bulldogs moving forward. Now, we've all seen this defense before with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban and all of that. They are really good in rematches, and they are really good at taking away what you're best at. And maybe the fact that Daquan Wright was not being paid attention to going into the game is the reason he was able to break loose, and they're going to shift the focus to him. I'm just saying, I don't entirely trust the pass rush yet whenever they don't know for 100% that you're going to throw the football. And Texas's offensive line was really bad. I think it's a wait and see type thing. This isn't the 2019 Georgia Bulldogs lining up. Now, they're still good. They're still 5 stars everywhere, but it's not those guys.
I agree. It's not the defense that carried them back-to-back national championships. I've just, from an eye test standpoint, watched them and went, man, Georgia Tech's a pretty good offense. They could move the ball. Alabama can do, and Georgia Tech likes to run it. Alabama likes to throw it. Didn't matter. No one could really do anything. Kirby Smart with extra time to prepare, and I don't think that he was wasting any time diving into the Tulane game film. I think he's been prepping for Ole Miss for for quite a while. It is indeed hard to beat a team twice, but let's get to our predictions here, Steven. I do think Georgia gets that done. I don't think it's quite as high scoring as last time. I think that's because of the Georgia defense, as I mentioned. I'm going 28-20. Georgia wins, and I'll take them to cover the 6.5 provided by our friends at FanDuel. Over-under in this game, I think there could be plenty of points. 55.5, highest of any of the 4 quarterfinal matchups.
Interesting. I'm going to go with Ole Miss 27, Georgia 21. No team that has had a bye has won to this point a college football playoff game. The layoff is no joke. It's almost a month between Georgia playing football and now, and Ole Miss got to knock the cobwebs off about a week ago. So I expect the Rebels to come out guns a-blazing in this game.
I hear you on that, except that Georgia was in the exact same spot last year, and I think Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart both will have learned the lessons of a long layoff and playing at this point. Now, Lanning got the tune-up against James Madison, but I think Kirby will make adjustments in how he gets his team ready to play this game after not having played since December 7th was the SEC championship game. This college football calendar, it really stinks.
Yeah, here's the thing about that. In my opinion, we don't know what those lessons are at this point because nobody has won a game that's had a bye week.
That's true. We will see. He's Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss, great as always. Did you want a little portal chatter? You're going to get some because Oklahoma State might be making some big-time moves. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I've used Game Time on several instances myself to go to sporting events, to go to comedy shows, and the experience has been great. I have saved money compared to other ticketing services, getting the ticket onto my phone and getting into the event super easy. I know what to expect up front. Game Time's just giving you everything that you want from a ticketing service. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. A splash could be coming down from outer space in Stillwater. Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State is here to discuss. There are a lot of reports out there, Cody, that Drew Mestemaker, who is one of the top transfer portal quarterbacks available, the nation's leading passer this season from North Texas, will be following his head coach, Eric Morris, to Oklahoma State. Do you think that's where this is heading?
Yeah, 100%. It appears as though he got a 2-year deal somewhere in the range of 3.1 to 3.5 mil. He's supposed to be making the announcement Saturday. I think the timing might be simply because there's some other North Texas players that are likely to jump on this wagon. Caleb Hawkins, right, 1,300-yard rusher, All-American, should be in that conversation. Miles Coleman, slot wide receiver that has played years all the way going back to high school with Drew Mestemaker. He's likely coming over as well. We needed this, man. We needed not only an influx of talent from a coaching perspective, but I firmly believe that one of the biggest reasons why this was the right hire for Oklahoma State was the coaching staff and the roster that he was likely going to be able to bring with him. Spencer, it's one of those things now. It's almost more important that you get a totality in packaging as opposed to just a coach, right? Whenever you're doing these coaching searches, you're not only looking for a coach, but you're looking for a coach that has a staff ready to go and an exorbitant number of star players that are ready to make the shift as well. And that's seemingly what the donors were able to lean on, and it's finally coming to fruition.
Is that number that I don't think is 100% confirmed, $3 million or so, or upwards of $3 million? Is that on a per year basis, or is that for the course of the 2 years?
To my understanding, it would be like 3.2-ish per year for the next 2 years.
So to me, that stands out in a big way because I remember many a moons ago Cody, when Mike Gundy was at the podium and he set a little spark under Dan Lanning's team because he made comments about money. And my take at the time, I'm an Oregon guy, but my take at the time was I really don't think that he's trying to tick off Dan Lanning or fire a shot across the bow to Eugene. And obviously, Dan Lanning is right to have used it that way. You do whatever is necessary to get your team in the right mindset to win. But I thought Mike Gundy was just making a plea to his donor base and fans saying, we're not going to compete with Oregon on Saturday because we are not investing enough. If they all of a sudden with a new staff, and maybe Mike Gundy wasn't the right guy to push them in this direction, if in year one you're bringing over, I know the connection's there from the previous school, but if you're offering north of $3 million, Cody, that's as competitive an offer as almost anybody in college football can make. And to me, would represent a sizable shift in the long-term outlook of the Oklahoma State program that just won a single game all season.
Yeah, I think that there was obviously a lot of rumors about how there was donors that weren't happy with Mike Gundy because he wouldn't come to banquets, he wouldn't come to events, he wouldn't talk to donors, he wouldn't give a sales pitch as to why they should invest more money. And so there was, a lot of speculation that there were donors that were lined up to be involved that just would not be involved with Mike Gundy at the helm because of Mike Gundy's lack of involvement with that nature of the business. Bringing in Eric Morris, big deal. But I think Raj Murdy, the GM coming over, maybe the biggest coup of all of them. Getting 85% of the staff is great. Getting 50% of the star players from Texas, also great. But I think what we do in the transfer portal is going to be indicative of that donor base finally stepping up. So it'll be one of those proof is in the pudding things. If Drew Mestemaker is in fact a Cowboy, you know the price tag's in between 3 and 3.5. Then you have Caleb Hawkins coming on board. If he is making that transition, he's likely to be in the million-ish range, right? A top-tier running back is going to be over $1 million. And Oklahoma State seemingly has the ability to pay that. And that's been a big misconception about Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy. But I think there is validity in the fact that some of these donors were reluctant to get involved because of Mike Gundy's stonewalling on certain things to begin with.
I think that's a shakeup, not just in Stillwater, but in the Big 12 writ large. We've seen what Texas Tech has done with a huge inflush of cash, and I don't think that Oklahoma State is in that same realm, but I think that it's demonstrative that they're trying to not be left behind here, and they're seeing what BYU's doing, what Texas Tech is doing to, I think, a lesser and different extent what Colorado has done over the last couple of years. Like, you need some energy, you need some life, and if Drew Mestemaker does wind up making his way to Stillwater, Cody, it's not just about the statement that makes off the field. I look at what it means on the field, and I go, I don't know how Drew Mestemaker isn't automatically one of the top, at least in the top half of quarterbacks in the Big 12, which has been a great quarterback league for the last couple of seasons, and I think it will be again, even though they're having some guys potentially transfer out. We'll see where Josh Hoover ends up, where Brendan Sorsby ends up, where Sam Levitt ends up, but if you'd put Mestemaker in the Big 12 this year, I don't think he's number one because I still need to see what he does against a higher average level of competition. But he's easily in the top half and will be a massive upgrade for Oklahoma State at quarterback.
Yeah, it definitely is Oklahoma State getting back to its offensive roots, right? We don't know what we're going to be able to do defensively, but the days of putting up 45, 55 points on a daily basis does seem to be that old school connection that Mike Gundy built that we lost sight of over the last handful of years. And Oklahoma State's always been able to recruit running backs and wide receivers, right? That's never been an obstacle. We've been pretty hit and miss on quarterbacks, and Mike Gundy has been part of the missing factor. The greats that played at Oklahoma State were all backups, right? Your Brandon Whedons, your Mason Rudolphs, your Spencer Sanders, your Taylor Cornelius's, none of them were the starters. So our evaluation of quarterback talent has been very hit and miss. If you can get a quarterback guru like Eric Morris to go alongside some of the rich tradition that we have at those outside positions, running back and wide receiver, I think that it's at least going to be exciting again. Am I going to jump off the rails and say Oklahoma State's a 10-win team? No, I learned my lesson, Spencer, okay? Not doing that this go around. But I think if you do get Drew Mestemaker, and you do get Caleb Hawkins, and you do get Wyatt Young and Sadiq Clements, this is a 500 bowl competitive team year one.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great place to start for Eric Morris and company because, I've suggested many a times on this show, Cody, and my everydayers know this, of course, that there should be a promotion relegation system in college football between the FCS, the Group of Five, and the FBS. I think it could be wonderful and make a lot of things great. Part of that is that you would have a relegation bowl, essentially, between the two worst teams in the FBS after each season. This year, Oklahoma State would have played in my relegation bowl against Boston College. I think that's must-see TV. Winner stays in the FBS. Loser goes down to the Group of Five. Huge stakes. Huge stakes across the board. But anyway, maybe I'll get my wish one day. Maybe I won't. But I want to close with this. If Drew Mestemaker does wind up going, as we record this, hasn't been official, but that's the expectation according to several reports. If that happens, is this just the start? What else will Eric Morris be able to do in the transfer portal when it opens on Friday and stays that way for 10 days if he's able to land Drew Mestemaker as certainly a foundational piece of the class?
Again, it'll be a proof in the pudding moment. What kind of transfer portal players are we going after? And financially speaking, how competitive are we going to be? I think Texas Tech did set the model. Do you have to spend almost $30 million? Probably not. But if you're not spending at least 20 to 23, it's going to be really hard to be competitive. And I think that's precisely what Oklahoma State is trying to do. But we'll find out in the transfer portal. You mentioned Drew Mestemaker. There's going to be a lot of individuals that come with hefty price tags. Last year, what we did, Spencer, is we went helmet shopping, right? So we got a lot of transfers from LSU and Florida and UCLA, but it didn't pan out, right? We paid top-tier money, but nothing panned out. So is Raj Murdy going to be worth his weight in gold? We're going to find out in the transfer portal. And does Oklahoma State really have the donor money that seems to be hiding in the background, or is it all just fodder for conversation? We're going to find out.
Cody Stovall, Locked On Oklahoma State. Great as always, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.